A lot of money is spent on secular organizations to try to provide benefit for the local communities. But what we've seen is that these organizations have degenerated into money laundering operations, essentially, for the Democratic Party, as we see in Minnesota right now, and as the investigation started in California. They end up being places where there's a tremendous lack of accountability. Now, it used to be that these sorts of charity operations were handled by
I've seen from being in the academic world, my whole family having their world in education, that there's always a lot of red tape to make big moves happen. I'm curious what kind of influence that you think you'll be able to have in actually launching those initiatives.
Hi, I'm Dr. Ori Nagy, here with the Dr. Nagy Show. I'm running for U.S. Congress in Nevada's 3rd Congressional District, and today on our show we have Nick Ko, who is an AI entrepreneur and an innovator in that field. He has a PhD in the field of AI, and we're going to learn all about how American businesses, and particularly those here in Nevada, can leverage AI to grow their revenue and increase their market share.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Thanks. I'm excited to have you.
I've heard of some amazing things about your plans for the future of healthcare, and I'd love to hear a little bit more about that.
The bottom line to it is we have a way of reducing costs dramatically while improving the quality of care by shifting insurance incentives. So if we shift insurance incentives away from the publicly traded insurance firms towards mutual insurance companies, then we'll have CEOs who have their incentives properly aligned with patients. And it will save hundreds of millions of dollars for the economy, because that money will stay within the states instead of going to Wall Street, where it goes to shareholders in China, Russia, Saudi Arabia, and the central banks of Europe. And when a mutual insurance company makes a profit, they pay their profit back to the mutual insurance company policyholders, the patients. And the next year, rather than taking a bunch of money from the patient just to give it back to them at the end of the year, they reduce premiums. So you can see this entity where the CEO's incentives are aligned with the patients, where the costs are going to fall every year, and where the money will stay within the state to enrich the local economy. It's just a win-win-win on every basis. The only people who are going to be upset are United Healthcare, Cigna, Aetna, and I don't think they have too many fans out there.
Well, it sounds exciting. I have health-focused entrepreneurs based in tech startup houses that we run. We have one here in Vegas and one here in LA, right down the street. So I go between LA and Vegas. And they're launching all sorts of platforms as well as startups. They're also focusing on accelerating healthcare or using AI to monitor sessions, so we have more effective physicians and more effective practices and results for patients. I also saw in your living room here that you had a team of people that are working on all sorts of AI apps and applications. So it's really cool to see that you're using these technologies as well.
I'm so inspired by all these bright young people I'm meeting as I've been out there and getting to know the community and learning about marketing and how you get a message out as a political campaign, but also as any business. These folks are so sharp, and all the new tools that are out there to compete, to really outcompete old media with the newer media that's free. And I think if I get to Washington, keeping that space free and free from the domination that we used to see in the old media markets, that'll be a key to helping America thrive. I'm really excited to help defend people like this.
I'm also very curious what you think about Kennedy's work and what's going on.
Kennedy's been fantastic. The ability that he's had to focus America's interest on curing problems that we've had in the healthcare industry for such a long time. He's rooting out a lot of the entrenched interests in the food production industry, as well as in the pharmaceutical industry, and trying to turn things over to focus on what's best for Americans rather than what's best for these giant corporations.
I'm really happy to hear about the focus more on nutrition as well. And I heard that there's a game plan to roll that into more of the education system.
Yeah, yes. Yeah. We were able to over the last 2 years, we've been floating the story out that here in Las Vegas we have the best chefs in the country. We have the freshest food being shipped in every morning. We have access to the best nutritionists at the UFC, the NHL, the NFL, the WNBA. We have all the tools we need to provide the most nutritious, delicious meals to the kids in our schools, but we're not using them. And so if we start to leverage that, we can reduce obesity, reduce diabetes, long-term health problems, improve athletic performance, academic performance, reduce mood disorders, depression, suicide, school violence, teacher assaults, and school shootings. So we think we can prove all of this, and we've been collaborating with a lot of the epidemiologists, public health officials, biostatisticians, nutritionists. We talked to the head nutritionist for the NFL, the head nutritionist for the Golden Knights, head nutritionist at Roseman, and the head nutritionist at UNLV. We've had chefs from all over the city. Everybody here wants to help kids do better. So we were finally able to meet with the directors at the Clark County School District, and for both the head of nutrition and the head of food purchasing. And we said, listen, everybody in the city is committed to laying out any resource that's at their disposal to help you in your mission. What do you need? And they started to work with us, and they said, look, I think there's a pathway where we can open up the production of healthier, better foods to all of the restaurants and all of the food producers here in the city. So if they produce 330,000 meals a day, that is a tremendous amount of volume that local small businesses can start to produce for. And if they're producing food at a higher standard than the rest of the country, and we can prove it, which is what all those scientists were for, all those epidemiologists, we can prove it in a year or 18 months, we can demonstrate that Nevada's got the best food system for the schools in the country, and 40 other states are going to copy us. And that'll mean a lot of business, a lot of revenue, a lot of jobs here in Las Vegas.
Wow,
and this is all without raising a dime in taxes.
Well, that also sounds very great.
Yeah.
I'd be very curious about that. I also have a background as a teacher. I used to teach in Utah. Also, my mom was a teacher. My dad was a university president. He was the president of DeVry. Eventually, he was a chairman.
Oh, wow.
And I also used to lecture as well in university, but I've seen from being in the academic world, my whole family having their world in education, that there's always a lot of red tape to make big moves happen. And I'm curious what kind of influence that you think you'll be able to have in actually launching those initiatives.
You know, a lot of the initiatives that happen in education happen at the local level. The institution of charter schools has been like a state issue, but to the extent that we can allow the federal government to incentivize the states to shift resources in that direction, I used to be skeptical of charter schools, because the first couple that I'd heard about had failed and left the kids in the lurch. But the ones that are operating today are phenomenal. They have these direct-to-career programs, so where they teach kids skills like being an EMT or being a pilot, which lead to great careers for folks, and you don't have to go to college. You don't saddle yourself with a tremendous amount of debt. They're really great, and the quality of education and athletics at some of these charter schools is really is very, very impressive. Yeah. So I'm a big fan of those. For DeVry and the colleges, one of the things that we're trying to promote right now in the country is to encourage people to analyze, is a college degree going to be the right pathway for them to get to self-sufficiency? And for a lot of people, it ends up not adding to their revenue-generating potential and just saddles them with debt. So I used to work on for the Governor's Office of Economic Development on the Workforce Board for healthcare. And one of the things we had done is we had looked at all of the different jobs in healthcare, so nurse, x-ray technician, phlebotomist, orderly, a physician. There's probably about 80, 90 of these jobs. And we had broken down what the educational requirements are, what the salary would be like for people who chose that as a line of work, how many hours a week they were working, and then little quotes of what the lifestyle is like for people. So that people, if they couldn't work or decided not to work in whatever capacity they had before, and they were looking for something, they're like, yeah, I could see myself in that role. We want to open that same system up to the kids in junior high, so they can start to plan out their life for themselves. Say, I would like to be somebody who's like that and have that kind of time. And we think that would be a tremendous resource, not just for the healthcare sector, but we'd like to see videos put forward like that really in most sectors and jobs in the country. And I think if we can advocate for something like that at the national level, it will go a long way to reducing college debt in this country and enabling people to start to earn faster and build their future nest egg faster for their families.
Oh yeah, I think that's very important. I myself, although I'm a big believer in university, I've been in university, for 35 years. So from age 12, I took all my dad's classes. Now I'm 46, I'm still in university, but I've never stopped learning. But I'm also a big believer in self-reliance and also learning how to be an entrepreneur, to the point where I went 2 years ago. I was a missionary for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, but in a special group, because usually you're like a teenager wearing a name tag, knocking on doors. But they created a special group called Tier 1, where my goal was to teach self-reliance and entrepreneurship. Okay. So over about 9 months, I traveled to 150 countries just teaching entrepreneurship and self-reliance and visiting all the churches and temples for the church and teaching on groups. And most of the skills that people need to learn to become self-reliant weren't the weren't the skills of typically like, you need to learn your basic math and physics and English. It was mostly, this is what you need to do if you wanted to get a job, how to get a job, how to do it well, how to be self-reliant, how to build your core values. These are the values you want to focus on, and also how to build a business, how to use your passion to get clients, how to focus on needs and pain points and results. And what I realized from both being a teacher and also just mentoring kids, that a lot of the people in terms of education, it wasn't necessarily the degrees you've earned. I've done 7 complete degrees, but I think that was mostly the skills that you learn from the field and the way you could execute through certain values of like having good communication skills, soft skills, empathy, having the right core values. I call it Christ-like leadership, not because you have to believe in Jesus Christ, like I'm a big believer in Christ, but to believe in the principles of kindness, patience, respect, self-reliance, discipline, and then actually how do you execute? How do you be not necessarily an entrepreneur, but at least entrepreneurial in the business so you could actually produce results? And I would love to see more of this in our education system, along with nutrition and all these other focuses. That's been my passion for the last 25 years, because my main business outside of putting custom AI apps and robotics in my newer business was a company I built called Self Mastery, which is focused on that. I'd love to see more of that.
All the characteristics and traits that you talked about weren't just part of being a good Christian, but are part of being a good American, a good citizen in our country. It gives you a way to participate and add to your family and add to your community. One of the things that I've been thinking a lot about is, a lot of money is spent on secular organizations to try to provide benefit for the local communities. But what we've seen is that these organizations have degenerated into money laundering operations, essentially, for the Democratic Party, as we see in Minnesota right now, and as the investigations start in California. They end up being places where there's a tremendous lack of accountability. Now, it used to be that these sorts of charity operations were handled by churches. And one of the reasons they were handled by just faith organizations in general was because there was a pastor whose job was to know all of the people in the flock, and all of the people who were part of the flock were kind of holding the pastor accountable. So it made sense for them to want to go out and help people who are suffering and provide them with a message that will uplift their lives and set them on a track where they're once again valued and loved members of the community. And it seems a shame that there's been such a push to extract that from our community and our country, I think to the detriment of the country, and to replace that with a reliance on government. It would be wonderful to see if there was a way to once again empower faith leaders who know their community and are held accountable by their communities to once again provide the services that they know their communities need, because more than anybody else, their business is knowing who's in need in their community.
Yeah, I'm a 100% believer in that. I think it's great when I hear that there's more, I guess we would say, a relaxed state around even saying the words Christ or God. I think that's like prohibited words in church, to the point where I've been to children recitals, and I've seen children only singing Christmas songs about Santa Claus, but not actually able to sing anything about why the holiday was created.
One of the saddest things I remember seeing growing up is, so driving on the highways out here, every once in a while, you'd see a cross by the side of the highway where somebody had died. And when you saw that cross, you knew there was a family that was grieving and remembering their loved one, but it was also a warning, hey, slow down, don't let this happen to you too. And so both things were of use, I thought, to the community, right? And to remind each other that we care about each other, right? And if it's not just for caring about yourself, it's caring about maybe somebody whose life you might end if you're driving carelessly. But then some law got passed where the crosses had to be moved, I think like half a mile or something ridiculous away from the roadside. So you could barely see the thing out there, and it was of no use to anyone. And it was just, I was so sad to see a law like that pass, because I don't know who was benefiting. Because I thought those crosses, it was a nice thing that people were trying to do for each other in our country, and somebody thought that they had to prevent that. And that we don't have to do that. Yeah. We don't have to be a country that's like uses in which government is so spiteful against people who are trying to celebrate the joy of their faith.
Sure, absolutely, and I'm also a very deep believer in that. I was just telling some of the people in the house while I was waiting to meet with you today about how I'm also a big believer in the Buddhist practices of meditation. I've done multiple 2-week silent meditations through vipassanas. I've Also been really, really deeply involved with the church environment. In fact, I was also not just a Mormon missionary, I was also a Catholic missionary.
Okay. Yeah. Wow. Okay.
And I also lived in
background.
a Hare Krishna temple.
Okay. Wow.
I was in India for a while too. So, I really believe that it's really important for people to be able to practice.
So do you see more similarities or differences between all these religions?
I actually have seen unification in beliefs. I believe that there's a very strong united view. I think I consider myself multi-faith. I believe that I'm a Christian. I also have Jewish blood, but I also grew up going to a Buddhist church, and I've been going to Hare Krishna temples. And I believe that the unified message of each of those faiths actually are very strong. I think that a lot of people are saying that, if you believe in this religion or that religion, there's potential issues. But I actually think there's a lot of unified beliefs where there's actually not contradictions if you have the right interpretation. There's a group called the Self-Realization Fellowship, created by a guy named Paramahansa Yogananda, that has an amazing vision about how you could learn from all these great teachers and lessons. And I believe if you take those values and share it with the world and youth, especially for me, it's helped me with a huge spiritual transformation.
No, it's any route that people take to where they find the internal peace that allows them to give more of themselves to their community in a productive and a way that helps build up other people is fantastic and really a benefit to our community. And to the extent that you have a message to share that helps people find a positive path, that's fantastic.
I spent a couple months in Israel when I was in law school. I was in this study abroad JD program where we were in Israel and we're meeting with the religious leaders of all the different faiths that are out there. Cool thing is this is during Christmas time.
Oh, sure, yeah, okay.
Christmas and New Year's. And so we got to meet with so many different faith leaders that were Muslims, Jewish, and Christian, and also went to secret underground gatherings, even within Bethlehem, that people don't even know exist, like in basements of apartment buildings, and talking to them.
Yeah.
And it's cool to see that there's a lot of education initiatives just among youth of these different faiths that historically have been fighting and showing that they have so many similar paths and so many united views and viewpoints. I think that's going to be the biggest path towards reconciliation of ideals and more love.
Yeah, I bet if somebody looked at history, there were more years of peace than there were of like strife and bloodshed.
Yeah, when I built a company that required me to work like 100 hours a week until I exited. It got to $100 million, and I sold my shares in the company. Recently we acquired it, but during the following 6 years, all I did was do spiritual journeys to try to find out why I still felt like I was missing something in life. And so what I did is I started traveling all over the world just to go to spiritual centers and meet with gurus, study with greats from Tony Robbins, Deepak Chopra. I went to Osho, met every possible guru, every possible journey, from climbing Everest to doing all sorts of crazy things. And I would pray. I started praying for the first time. I felt like I was literally talking to God for the first time. Thought if I went to all these different spiritual centers and prayed, I'd get different messages each one. And I got the exact same message, which to me was more love, which is why I wear this hat. And for me, that's actually changed not my perspective just on how I relate to my family, my loved ones. I guess pastors have told me that love represents Christ and also being more Christ-like to other people. I think that for me, it's also like how now that I'm back into the business world and I've been launching startup houses and doing programs to help entrepreneurs, has been just to lead with that as a focus. And I think it's so great because the biggest reason why I exited was because of the corporate culture. Mm-hmm. And when there's a corporate culture, a government culture, a school culture, building a culture where there's like more love and connection and having that path has been such a huge focus of mine.
Well, that makes a lot of sense, right? One of the purposes of faith and spiritual awakening is so you can work on yourself, but then so that you can start to give back to your community. And one of the ways, and the way that you've been focusing and helping a lot of people with, is by helping them with their entrepreneurship, with learning how to run businesses, and now you're helping them learn about AI and how to use that to speed up their businesses. And one thing I didn't mention is he has a very long history in Silicon Valley and in Wall Street, been very successful with venture capital. And so tell me, for small businesses here now, how do they use AI to build up their business, to build up their market share?
Yeah, actually, my PhD dissertation was just on that focus.
Okay.
There's two things that I really focused on. One was called the Technology Acceptance Model, TAM, which is, and the second one was on the diffusion of information model. So one is about, the first one is about ease of use. How easy is it to use the technology? You know, is it something that users really are going to take advantage of, or is it just that next flashy thing that you think they want? But it's actually the first task I give people in my startup house is the last thing that people want to do, which is to basically find 40 people that are potential customers and get one to be a customer, even before your technology is built. It's the exact opposite of what you see in typical Silicon Valley, where you're raising a bunch of money and trying to build this fancy thing and then selling it to market. But we teach people to focus on getting that first customer, even if you're just consulting with them at first and building technology around their needs and giving it to them. And I found that when you do that, you'll get customers within your first 30 days that will actually fund your business as opposed to raise a bunch of money.
We did the same thing. I 100% agree with your model. We used that strategy to become the #1 residential solar installer here in Las Vegas back in 2010. And we pre-sold. So before we'd had to lay out any capital or lay out any construction, we had to put out an outlay in advertising and salespeople. That was an outlay. But we pre-sold everything, and then we were able to, when we had enough in pre-orders, we could go and buy the equipment we needed in bulk at much discounted pricing, and then fulfill those orders much cheaper than the other competitors in the market.
And I love that. That's actually how I believe that all businesses that want to not go into massive amount of losses because you have too much investment money and make a really profitable business instead that survives the long term, that's the market to go to. And then we focus a lot on diffusion information where you could use AI to accelerate those things that are working for your customers and then automating those systems and processes as opposed to trying to rapidly build processes that you don't necessarily know work.
So what's the first step? Somebody owns a business and how do they start implementing AI today?
So I actually wrote down what I call my 150 checklist.
Okay.
It's 150 tasks where I literally tell everyone, if you do all these tasks and you don't have a successful company within 30 days, you don't have clients at the end of this, then I will literally give you $10,000.
Okay, wow.
In fact, one of the things that you have to do is to use AI and the model of using AI to actually publish a best-selling book using AI to help you market it, build it, edit it, all the processes. Wow. And I also say that if you follow these methods and you work with me and you don't create your best-selling book, because I think everyone needs to, whether you're the owner of a dry cleaning company or whether you're the owner of a restaurant or you're a brand influencer like yourself, if you don't have a best-selling book out there, you really don't know who you are, your platform, you're running for office. I think it's super important. I also ran for office. I ran for Senate when I was 19.
No kidding. Yeah. Wow, what was that like?
It was really, really unique because I was running against an incumbent who is 93 years old. Okay, Democratic incumbent. He won again. No one wanted to run against that guy. He's a really nice guy. First thing he did when I was running is he called me personally on the phone, just said, "Hey, I just want to know if we're going to keep this a very clean campaign. I wish you all luck." And I thought that was really nice. At the time, I was working at a law firm. So I thought it was a lot of fun, a lot of work, a lot of campaigning, a lot of door to door. I knocked on thousands of doors, not tens of thousands of doors.
That makes a difference.
It makes a difference. But he won. But it was good. I had a Republican nomination at the time.
Was this in Utah or in
This was in Wisconsin. I was at the University of Wisconsin.
Okay.
I thought I had a shot. There was a lot of people.
That's a great school, by the way. A lot of people don't realize that, but they do a lot of really excellent science up there.
Great science, amazing engineering program. In fact, when I was studying engineering there, I actually got a grant from the university of $800,000 to do a NASA project that flew on a plane called the Vomit Comet, the KC-135, where you go to 60,000 feet, you dive 20,000 feet, and do science research.
Okay.
And so we created a product called aerogel, which is this amazing substance that allows you to build windows that are able to withstand high temperatures, and it's actually still a company that's available today.
Okay.
A lot of tangents. Sorry, I totally forgot what we went on.
That's very, very interesting. So how do people get in touch with you to get this 150-step checklist?
So if you're interested in learning more about this 150 task checklist, we have a Startup House program. And if you visit my site, it's nikkyko, nikkyKho.com.
Oh, Nikky.
Yeah, nikkyKho.com.
KHO. Okay.
Yeah, I'd love to share what these tasks are and how you can use AI to really accelerate your business.
Well, it sounds like, I mean, you've been working with your church, traveling all around the world. They found value in the things that you were teaching. They wanted every church they had in the world to gain access to this knowledge. And here you are helping people here in America to supercharge their businesses using the latest in technology that hopefully will help American businesses dominate in the world, and we'll be able to use this, the technology that we have, to leap our country ahead of everybody else and keep America #1.
Appreciate it. I appreciate and love your mission. Thank you so much for having me here today. It was a great conversation.
Thanks so much for being here. I appreciate
Cheers.
it.
This podcast is a campaign communication paid for by Nagy for Congress and authorized by me, Dr. Nagy. The views and opinions expressed by guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of the campaign or its affiliates. Discussions are intended for informational and conversational purposes only and do not constitute legal, financial, or professional advice. Any references to public policy matters reflect general positions and priorities at the time of the recording and are subject to change based on legislative process and voter input.